Why is she all alone, Mama? The question dropped between them like a coin in a well, quiet, clean, and impossible to ignore. Who was that girl? Why was she sitting alone in a wheelchair at the far end of the terminal, like someone left behind by the world? Was she waiting for someone important? Or had someone important already forgotten her? Her hands were shaking. That was obvious, even from where they stood. And good Lord, why had no one done a thing? Maya Williams adjusted the laundry bag slung over her shoulder, her other hand holding tight to Malik. Her son's eyes were locked on the pale, motionless girl by the window. She was maybe 17, dressed in cream slacks and a cardigan that probably cost more than Mia's car. Yet, there was nothing flashy about her, just stillness, controlled, practiced stillness, the kind Mia had seen in people trying hard not to fall apart. Oh my, Mia muttered under her breath. She looked again. Not one soul had stopped. I don't know, baby, she finally said, replying to Malik's question. But I think maybe we should ask her. Charlotte Winslow didn't hear them. She was focused on her cup half full, trembling in her grasp. Her fingers twitched again, and this time she lost her grip. The paper cup tipped, rolled off the small side table, and landed with a dull splash on the polished floor. Coffee spread in a thin pool beneath her chair. Still, no one looked. Not the suited men whispering over stocks. Not the assistant texting behind mirrored glasses. Not the flight staff who hurried past like she was another fixture in the room. Charlotte didn't flinch. She just stared straight ahead. What am I doing here? She thought. What version of me is everyone expecting? Does my name matter more than my pain? And then another misstep. As Charlotte attempted to reposition her lap desk with one hand and shift her bag from the side of the chair, her elbow knocked something loose, a single sheet of paper floated down to the floor, her boarding pass. It landed just beyond reach. She stretched, but the wheels locked. She leaned, but her arms were too weak. She tried backing up slightly, then nudging forward, but her left side jerked awkwardly, the tremor intensifying. She let out a small exasperated sound, half frustration, half panic. Still, no one helped, not a glance. If she didn't retrieve it, she'd miss the jet her father had scheduled. And if she missed that jet, she'd be accused of derailing weeks of planned meetings, interviews, appearances. It would be her fault again. Maya knelt beside Malik. Can you do me a favor, honey? Malik nodded. Give me that candy and your jacket. He handed her a single strawberry hard candy wrapped in crinkled red plastic, the kind with the soft center, his favorite. Maya kissed his forehead. Thanks, baby. I'm going to talk to her. Okay, you stay right here. Malik nodded again, but his eyes stayed on Charlotte. Maya approached calmly. Not out of pity, she didn't carry pity, just presence. When she reached the girl, she crouched slightly, careful not to block her view or tower over her. Miss, she said gently. You dropped something. Charlotte turned her head. Her eyes were tired, wary. Still, she didn't speak. Maya stepped to the side, bent slowly, and picked up the boarding pass. She offered it without comment, just held it out in both hands like something delicate. Charlotte blinked. Thank you, she whispered. No trouble, Maya said. Just saw you trying to get it. Folks seemed too busy to notice. Charlotte took it and tucked it into the front pocket of her purse with care. Her hands were still unsteady, but she gripped tighter this time. I'm Maya. The woman continued. My boy's over there. He saw your cup fall and asked why you were by yourself. Charlotte glanced past her toward the boy hiding behind the luggage cart. Your son? Yep. Malik, 7. Big heart. Big questions. Charlotte hesitated. And what was his question this time? Maya smiled. He wanted to know why you were all alone. Charlotte looked away, her jaw tightening. Because that's how people like me get left. That's so, she nodded slowly. You don't look like someone folks should be leaving. Maya said. Charlotte blinked. That's the thing, isn't it? I look like someone who doesn't need anyone. That's what they think. And what do you think? Charlotte's hands twitched again. She glanced at them, frustrated. I think I'm tired of pretending that's true. Maya lowered herself into the chair across from her. No one's watching, she said. You don't have to pretend right now. Charlotte looked at her. Really? Looked. You work here? I do. So why talk to me? Maya's smile didn't fade because you looked like you needed more than a coffee refill. Charlotte let out a short breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. She picked up the candy, rolled it between her fingers, and said nothing more. But her hand was steady now. Then, as if fate wanted to test that steadiness, a voice echoed across the terminal. Final boarding call for Miss Charlotte Winslow, Gate 7, private departure. Charlotte jolted, reaching into her bag and trying to turn the chair, but her left hand slipped again and her wheels snagged awkwardly on the edge of the table leg. Her breath caught. She looked around, panic rising fast. She wasn't going to make it. Not in time, not alone. Maya stood. Let's go, she said. I can't ask. Charlotte stammered. You didn't, Maya said simply. Hold your bag. I've got the wheels. She gently gripped the back handles of Charlotte's chair, maneuvering it with practiced ease. Not rushing, not announcing, just moving. What about your job? Charlotte asked. Maya smirked. Jobs come back, planes don't. Together, they made their way across the terminal. As they neared the gate, a staff member opened the door without question. Charlotte turned to Maya. You didn't have to do that. I know, Maya said, but I saw you. And with that, Charlotte rolled through the gate, not alone, not invisible, and not forgotten. The automatic doors to the private boarding tunnel whispered shut behind Charlotte. And for a brief moment, the world fell into a strange kind of silence. Not the kind born from stillness, but the kind that hums in your ears after too many voices have passed you by. She sat just inside the entryway, one hand still clutched around the boarding pass Maya had retrieved for her. The plane was a few yards ahead, ramp already lowered, its chrome skin glistening beneath the terminal's overhead lights. Two uniformed staff stood near the stairs, one checking a clipboard, the other tapping at a tablet. Neither looked up, neither offered to help. Charlotte stared at the distance between her and the ramp. It wasn't far, not far at all. But with her arms trembling again and her body slumped slightly to the left from fatigue, it might as well have been a 100 feet uphill. Behind her, the door hissed open again. You didn't really think I was going to leave you to fight that hill alone, did you? Maya's voice was casual but warm. She was slightly out of breath, having jogged the last few steps from the gate. Besides, I need to make sure they don't roll that red carpet back up on you. Charlotte blinked, caught somewhere between surprise and relief. You followed me? Maya shrugged. No one else did. Charlotte looked back toward the jet, then toward Maya. You'll get in trouble probably, Maya said, grinning. But I'll risk it. There was a pause. Charlotte let out a shaky breath. I hate this part. Which part? This? Needing help? Every step feeling like it confirms I'm broken. Maya tilted her head. You're not broken, honey. You're just navigating a world that never made room for your version of strength. Charlotte lowered her gaze. People don't say things like that. That's because most people don't see what they don't expect. Charlotte didn't respond. Instead, she turned her chair slightly toward the ramp. Her hands gripped the wheels and she tried to push forward. The left wheel stuck, catching slightly at the seam between tiles. She grimaced and tried again. Maya stepped beside her but didn't touch the chair. Tell me when. Charlotte glanced up, eyes narrowing. You're just going to stand there? Maya smiled. That's right. Not a step, not a push, unless you ask. The tremor in Charlotte's hand pulsed again, but this time she didn't pull away from it. She leaned into it, gritting her teeth. She pushed both wheels together and to go to the gala tonight, she said softly. Charlotte looked out the window at the event tents rising near the building's entrance. She shook her head. Number not tonight. Harriet nodded. Good. They rolled outside together beneath the gathering dusk. Charlotte realized the real gala was here in shared voices, woven lines, small grids of community art unfolding in the open. Before she left, she touched the edge of the tapestry not pinned for display, just folded to set aside. She traced her stitches. It was fragile work. This freedom she was learning to cradle, but also fierce work. She looked up at Harriet. Thank you, she said. Harriet smiled. You did the heavy lifting yourself. Charlotte took a breath. She leveled her gaze to the sky, becoming night. The distant lights on the tents looked dim compared to the warmth of the room she'd left behind. She whispered, I am learning how to belong. And she left, not vanished, not broken, but steadily drawn into the space she was choosing for herself. Dawn in Chicago felt like an unfolding promise. Charlotte lay in bed, arms resting on the sheets, eyes tracing the faint glow across the skyline. She'd slept with the window cracked, listening to the distant hum of streetcars, the murmur of early walkers on sidewalks, and the gentle vibration in the walls that a city's simply breathing creates. The lilt was neither chaotic nor empty. It felt like continuity. Not everyone notices the pulse and the quiet, but Charlotte did, and she found it steadying. She dressed in dark slacks and a light cardigan, comfortable, unpretentious, knowing she'd be on her feet later, meeting people, asking questions, observing. She tucked her notebook and sketch pad into her bag. The look felt deliberate, not deliberate. Her phone pinged with a new notification. A message from the Winslow Foundation's assistant. Van for site visit arrives in 20 minutes. Are you ready? Charlotte paused. Ready wasn't something she'd felt in weeks, but she sent back a single word. Yes. In the lobby, Harriet Jacobs waited with a small group, 2 program leaders and a translator for one of the neighborhoods they'd visit. They didn't stand in a line. They just stood, halos of calm readiness around them. Good morning, Harriet said. We're heading to Englewood today, starting with the Youth Reading Circle, then the Urban Garden Project, Charlotte acknowledged with a nod. The van ride was shorter than expected. Outside the zone's edge, the bedrock of cracked pavement felt more real than any boardroom floor she'd rolled across. They entered a community center built from red brick and hope. Inside, folding chairs circled around tall bookshelves. A dozen teens waited, their eyes bright behind their masks and tired by years of routine. Charlotte rolled in, pad on her lap. She introduced herself quietly, briefly. No title, just her name. Then she listened. One girl talked about how reading aloud gave her voice after too much silence. Another shared how space in a poem felt like breathing again. They recited favorite lines. Pa, Angelou, Gorman. Each reading was held with attention, not applause. And Charlotte felt tears sting simply because wonder didn't always come in fireworks. After the circle, they moved to the garden, a small lot where vegetables and words grew side by side. Volunteers tended tomato plants while children wrote haikus about sunlight and soil on colorful boards. Charlotte knelt slowly, awkwardly with a small trowel to plant seedlings alongside a girl named Sophia. So you wrote about the sun? Charlotte asked gently. Sophia's eyes flickered with pride. It's my thing, Charlotte smiled. It's beautiful. She planted her own seed thoughtfully, then looked at the boards where poems sputtered and then became real lines, markers soft in the day's warmth. Later at the van again, Charlotte let the lines settle in her mind. Not forced, not expected, not for show, just true. They drove past row houses and corner stores. On one block, a mural glowed with bold color and a single phrase, "Your story lights the way." Charlotte stared at it. She imagined her own line etched in that wall. Her trembling arc transformed into something monumental. At the final stop, they visited a senior community center. There, older Chicagoans shared memories drizzled with regret, resilience, and quiet genius Southern hymns, factory rhythms, neighborhood lunches. An elder woman pressed her hand. Your dad sends his respect for your work, she said softly. I'll be watching what you choose next. Charlotte bowed her head. Not out of fear or awe, but gratitude. The distance felt smaller now, not because she'd traveled too far, but because she'd shown up here. That evening, back at the hotel, she rolled into the suite with her knees buzzing from effort and her chest full of quiet resonance. The city outside was settling into lights and the hum of nightlife waking. But inside, her suite felt steady. She opened her notebook to a blank page. At the top, she wrote, "Distance is not only how far you can go, but where you choose to arrive." Then she sketched, unhurried, a horizon line, not flat, but curved just enough to feel infinite. Above it, a small sun emerging, flame, not fierce, but gentle. She pressed the page flat, brushing her fingers over her drawing. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Clara. Your line today, sunrise. I wish you were sketching alongside me. Charlotte typed back. I'll draw it tomorrow and added a small sun emoji. She tucked her notebook away and stood by the window. The city's lights were real and scattered, not curated by press teams, not managed by handlers. She didn't need them to define the warmer lights she felt growing within. She murmured softly, I'm arriving. Not on their timeline, but on mine. And beneath that sentence, as the skyline sighed into night, she allowed herself to pause. Presence was home. She breathed in the city, its distance, its edges, its start. She exhaled and simply stayed there, grounded by the lines she chose to own. Charlotte awoke to distant church bells chiming the first hour of daylight. She lay in bed a moment, feeling the bed's contours beneath her, less prison, more platform. Her body hummed with the memory of yesterday's sunlit visits, the youth, the garden, the elders' hands. She felt grounded, a kindness not new but unfamiliar in its consistency. She dressed in her same jeans and soft sweater uniform of presence. When she wheeled into the bathroom mirror, she met her own gaze. Not the girl in the wheelchair she once resented. Not the CEO's daughter she once performed for, but someone who had carved quiet strength into her muscles and her heart. She prepared for her final engagement in Chicago. A small afternoon discussion at a public library branch, followed by a dinner at a modest neighborhood eatery with community leaders. No gala, no flash, just real connections. In the hotel lobby, Harriet Jacobs waited beside the elevator. She wore a scarf in muted gold gentle authority. She met Charlotte's nod with a warm smile. Today is about listening back, she said. The library wants us to close with a reading. You don't have to lead it, but once you begin, they won't stop listening. Charlotte inhaled deeply, her heart steadied. The library front doors swung open on soft hinges, and Charlotte rolled in with Harriet at her side. The room smelled of aged paper and soft varnish. A dozen chairs circled an old oak table. A small audience waited. Librarians, volunteers, parents, and kids, leaning forward in curiosity, anticipation, not expectation. Charlotte settled in her seat. A woman with silver hair introduced the session. We're gathered today to hear stories of arrival, not departures. Hands rose. One by one. People spoke of small pivots opening a storefront, forgiving a neighbor, walking after years glued to grief. Each story echoed the impulse had felt at the fountain, at the mural, at the seeds in the soil. Small acts that grow quiet revolutions. When the listening cycle came back to her, Charlotte spoke. I've traveled through most of this week, a flight meant to launch a schedule, a tour meant to create a message. I've painted tiles, planted seeds, listened to children read aloud, held soup with elders, and heard those whose work makes the pulse of a community you rarely see at headline noise. She paused. Her voice settled. But here is what I discovered. Every time someone asked me, why are you here? I didn't have to default to a title. I could say, I'm here because it matters that I arrive. Because presence is the signal stronger than speech. The room exhaled. It wasn't relief or release. It was recognition. A mother stood then, tears in her eyes, and asked if Charlotte would read what she'd written for her daughter's first library card. She unfolded a small card. Her writing was earnest. May you see every book as a doorway? May you write your own doorway, too? Charlotte accepted the card lightly. She read it aloud, then added her own. And may you arrive in your own time into every road you choose to walk. Heads nodded. Charlotte's voice carried. No notes, just her line bridging theirs. Afterward, in the sunlit courtyard, Harriet handed her a small paper cup of lemonade. You delivered presents, not performance, Harriet said softly. That's rare work. Charlotte nodded. Thank you. Harriet studied her. Your father called. He wants to know when you'll return. He says, you've changed the way the foundation sees its mission. Charlotte felt her chest warm. Not with pride, but quiet grounding. She looked around at the children reading graphic novels, at parents tracing lines in their own notebooks, at volunteers chatting quietly about the next program. She realized her own arrival had become footprints in soft soil visible only if you paused long enough to notice. She sipped her lemonade. The sweetness was subtle, more cooling than sugary. It carried memory of summer sunshine and careful intention. Harriet placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Ready? Charlotte wheeled herself toward the library doors with slow confidence. Yes, she said. I'm here outside. The city hummed in layers, traffic next to silence, glass towers next to brick stoops. She breathed it all in. A kid on a bicycle rang a bell as he rode past. A mother called him back. A street vendor wore a tired smile. Charlotte realized that arriving didn't mean ruling. It meant staying, listening, becoming part of breath in a living place. At the curb, Harriet opened a car door. But Charlotte lingered. She pressed her palm to the glass of the library's front window, reading, reach, heart reach. She let her shadow fall inside. I belong here, too, she whispered. Not because my name is Winslow. Not because I can sit in executive suites, but because I chose presence the way others choose belonging. Silences answered, shuttered lines behind books, murmured pages, children skipping down halls. Not applause, just the steady pulse of being seen. She wheeled herself forward down the temporary ramp into humming streets toward horizons. She would trace herself and they would follow her lines. Because now, whenever someone asked her, why are you here, she would answer with the simple truth. Because I'm here and that would be enough. Charlotte moved through the quiet of her Chicago hotel room one last time. The week had transformed her world in small seismic ways, voices spoken, seeds planted, tiles placed, lines drawn. She had begun to see herself in places previously forbidden, between youth poetry near the fountain, behind the mural at Bronzeville, inside the reading circle at Englewood, sitting beside elders in their stories. She had arrived. Now, this moment felt like departure, but one she got to choose. She gathered her belongings. The indigo streaked sketchpad, the folded tapestry fragment from Harlem, Clara's early morning card. Teresa's slip with paint still smudged across the words, healing isn't about walking again. The tile piece from the community mural. Each item held its own memory of being seen, of encountering kindness without a megaphone. Charlotte wheeled to the window and looked out at the city. Chicago's skyline stretched past her fingertips like newly inked lines on an unrolled page. She wondered if this horizon belonged to her now. She whispered to it, I belong here, too. And for once, rumor and truths aligned. She sat. Her phone buzzed early again. A message from her father. Flight this evening. Are you packed? She scrolled past it. Later, she'd respond. This wasn't time for schedules. This was time for honoring distance. Downstairs, Harriet Jacobs awaited with a simple gesture, a card with the Winslow Foundation emblem printed in pale gold. She handed it to Charlotte with a quiet smile. For when you're ready, she said. Charlotte accepted it. It felt softer than the invitations she'd known before. It wasn't a command, just a place held in case she chose entry again. On the drive to the airport, Charlotte looked out the van window. Trees lined neighborhoods whose names she'd now remember. Bronzeville, Englewood, Hyde Park, all communities that had taught her.